Click the link in the description below to receive our free Building Mental Muscle newsletter, and for a limited time, get these 10 classic best-selling Law of Attraction books for free. We hope you enjoy this presentation. If so, please click the like button and click the subscribe button below to receive notification when we release new recordings.
Richard Hargraves presents On the Law by Neville Goddard. First published 1965. This audio edition recorded 2023. Digitally narrated using the voice of Christopher Sage for buildingmentalmuscle.com. Copyright 2023 Iron Power Publishing. All rights reserved. On the Law by Neville Goddard. I thought I would take a portion of John, a bit of Blake, something from a great scientist, and then my own experience and weave them together for you tonight and make it a very practical night. We'll start first of all with the scientist. That seems to gel in the minds of people that the thing is really based upon fact. Why, I do not know. But that's how people look upon the scientific mind. This chap is called Feynman, Richard Feynman, Professor Feynman at Cal Tech. He is considered one of the world's greatest physicists, who is involved with our atomic bomb and our great nuclear bomb today. But basically, he likes the theoretical side of it, not the down-to-earth side. He wrote a paper which came out in 1949. It was printed in what is known as the Science newsletter, and he was describing the behavior of a little particle which is produced by atomic disintegration. It is named today by our scientists as the positron. He wrote of the positron that it starts from where it hasn't been and speeds to where it was but an instant ago. Arriving there, it is bounced so hard its time sense is reversed, and it returns to where it hasn't been. Now, he said, an electron that is bounced is really deflected but continues on its course, a changed course, but it doesn't turn around. So, he calls this little particle the turnaround. He said, it has the capacity to meet itself coming back from where it hasn't been. Having observed this, said he, we must now completely alter our concepts of the universe, and no longer can we consider the universe and the future of the universe as developing continuously out of the past. We must now see the entire space-time history of the world laid out, and we only become aware of increasing portions of it successively. That the whole thing is done, and you and I only become aware of increasing portions of that, which is that the future is not developing out of any past, not after having observed the behavior of this little particle, that they call the positron. I maintain that our scientists by their observations are only discovering the workings of their own minds, that the physics of the mind cannot differ in any respect from the physics of the rest of nature. So, they will not go along the mystical path, the path of faith. They must have it proved to them in their laboratories, which is perfectly all right. They're discovering in their labs the workings of their own mind. Now, whether Feynman discovered it to the point where he accepts it, I don't know. He's here in the city, he's in Pasadena. But here, these are his words, and I've quoted them accurately. It's the October 15th letter of 1949. It's called the Science newsletter, and the date, you can find it in the library, October the 15th, 1949. When it was sent to me, I was stunned and thrilled, because it is exactly how I felt towards the entire picture. Now Blake makes the statement that the spiritual states of man, or he calls it the soul, are eternal. Then he calls upon us to distinguish between the man and his present state. That eternity exists and all things in eternity, independent of creation, which was an act of mercy. Everything exists. Everything is present and everywhere now, right now. That's what he claims. Now we go to the book of John, and then we'll come together and put them all together for you. The 14th chapter of the book of John. First of all, he calls upon us not to be disturbed. Let not your hearts be disturbed. You believe in God. Believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. Were it not so, would I have told you that I go to prepare a place for you? And when I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and I will take you to myself, that where I am there, you will be also. Verses 1-3. Now you read this, and you think a man is talking to men. It isn't so. That's not the Bible. The whole drama is taking place within us. As I read it, it's taking place within me. Do not be disturbed. You believe in God, well, believe also in me. The being speaking is my very being, for we are one. For in this same 14th chapter, he tells you, I am the Father, I am the only way, there is no other way. I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. Verse 6. And so, you believe in God? Believe in me, for I am the way to God the Father. There is no other way, so believe in me. I'm talking to myself. Now, in my Father's house, but I am He, there are unnumbered mansions. A mansion is simply a possibility. There are infinite possibilities in this world, and everyone can be realized if I believe in me. Believe in me. Well, how could I do it? You mean I could this very night be the man that I want to be? I could actually be anything in this world? I maintain yes, if I really believe in me. Well, let me share with you an experience. I did it this morning. I retired quite early and, therefore, I woke quite early. I had 6 unbroken hours and found myself at a very early hour of the morning fully awake, but much too early to rise and disturb the household. So, while in my bed I practiced a little something that I've done over the years. While on my bed I imagined I'm seated on my black leather chair in my living room. I cannot see my bedroom from my living room. I imagined I am seated on my black leather chair in my living room, and when it seemed natural to me, so I could look mentally and see in the far distance this bedroom, my body in one bed and my wife's body in the other bed, then I simply returned to the body. I did it a few times to get the feel. First thing, it proves to you the existence of something that isn't this. You become aware of a soul. You become aware of a power that is altogether different. You look into the mirror, and you think, now that's me. This is not it at all. You leave that you think to be yourself on the bed and you withdraw. As you withdraw, you think of what is on the bed. While you are seated, in your imagination, on the chair, you think of the bed. You don't go back until you want to go back. You sit there simply contemplating it. Then suddenly in your mind's eye you feel I'm on the bed, and you feel emotion. The whole thing takes place and you feel it as you return. Then this is what I did. Having done the first thing deliberately, I thought, now I'm not going to do it deliberately, I'm just going to experiment. I will withdraw from the body, but not say to myself where I will go. I'm not going to go to my chair in the living room. I don't want to go to New York now, because I have no plans for New York until the fall of the year. I don't want to go to San Francisco now, not until July. I don't want to go to Barbados. I have no definite plans for that. So, I will not put myself in some definite spot, I will simply withdraw in space. So, I will withdraw not knowing where I am and think of the body on the bed. And this is what happened to me. As I withdrew and became perfectly still, thinking of the body in my bedroom on the bed, suddenly I find myself in a room. And the room is sealed. No door, no windows, there's no entrance or exit to that room, but I'm on the inside. Beautiful room, lovely colors, and people very friendly. So, I went back to the bed. Tried it again, not knowing where the next one would be. I withdrew, and when I opened my eyes, I'm in a room, and here are the most angry crowd of men, all of the Oriental persuasion, and they meant no good to the speaker. But I knew how I came into that room, and I knew I am completely free to leave it at will. They didn't know that I knew it. So, I came into the room, and here I am thinking of the bed and the body, and as they began more and more, as they almost got together in a plot of real violence, I simply imagined myself on the bed, and I'm back on the bed. So, I entered that interior through a surface that had no opening, just as the sperm enters an egg, and it has no opening, either before or after the sperm has fertilized the egg. The being that entered that room was the power, the creative power of God, the sperm of God, and I am it. You are it. Your imagination is it. That's the immortal you that cannot die. I know now, having done it several times last night, I fertilized quite a few states. Some were pleasant and some unpleasant. I have to reap them. I was experimenting. I must be willing to let those now come into being. For everything that I entered in that manner. For there are infinite possibilities in the world, infinite. And when I either wittingly or unwittingly enter, I fertilize it. Then it grows in my world as my harvest. I do not always recognize my harvest, but there is my harvest. It couldn't come were it not that I at some moment in time, either knowingly or unknowingly fertilized it. That creative power in man is man's own wonderful human imagination. So, you could this night take this series, just as Feynman said, think of the entire space-time history of the world as laid out, and we only become aware of increasing portions of it, successively. I have the capacity to meet myself coming back from where I haven't been. Well, physically I certainly had not been in these rooms, but I have been in these rooms, and they were sealed as an egg is sealed. There's no opening on the outside at all. So, the sperm easily passes through the surface of an egg, although on the outside of the egg there is no opening, either before or after fertilization. Well, these are the eggs, infinite number of possibilities in the world, and God's creative power, which is human imagination, penetrates them and they come into being. The one who penetrates them stands and witnesses the harvest, but he doesn't recognize it because he does not remember ever having been there physically. No, you don't go there physically. Just as we are told, the positron starts from where it hasn't been, and it speeds to where it was an instant ago. Arriving there, it is bounced so hard its time sense is reversed, and then it returns to where it hasn't been. So, I stand here on my platform, or this morning on my bed, and then I assumed I am not on my bed, without any direction, and then my inner eye opened and I am in a room and it's peopled. My presence in that room animated it. It has no power in itself. It's dead until I got there. So, I am in a room, and they all become alive. Why? Because I am the light of the world, I illuminate it. Then, I am the life, I am the resurrection, I am the way, I am the truth. So, as I enter this state, everything that was there becomes animated. You don't recognize that you are the animating power, the operant power, that you bring it into life. There it is. Now, when I saw this angry crowd moving towards me, I decided to depart by simply remembering where the body was. And then I imagined myself on my bed, and then I opened my eyes, I'm back on the bed. So, did I not start from where I had not been physically? And did I not speed to where I was physically? And arriving there, I was bounced so hard my time sense was reversed. And then I start moving across a series of events which are going to take me to the harvest of that state. So, this is the picture, how to bring things into being. So tonight, trust me, I have done it. We who sit here this night as we go into the silence, and then don't sit on the chair where you are, withdraw from it. And put yourself, deliberately now, not in some nebulous manner, deliberately withdraw into another state. And then while in that state, whether your inner eye opens or not, you're in another state, and you're seeing exactly what you want to see. Everything as it ought to be seen. And feel the thrill of it. And then return to the place on this chair. And you've fertilized it. Now every egg has its own appointed time, every egg in this world. That was a vision of yours. And so, as you're told in Scripture, the vision has its own appointed hour. It ripens, it will flower. If it be late, wait, for it is sure, and it will not be late. Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 3. If it seems to you to be late, wait, but every egg has its own appointed hour. And we fertilize every state in this world in the same manner. You are the operant power. You are the creative power of God. You are the sperm of God. And you go into these states, and for one moment you occupy them. As you occupy them, you fertilize them. And then you return to that body. Now Blake makes the statement, man has no body distinct from his soul. That called body is a portion of the soul discerned by the five senses, the chief inlets of the soul in this age. So here, we impose this limitation upon ourselves for a purpose. And we will use it in this manner. I can put it down and withdraw for the purpose of impregnation. So, I put it on a chair, put it on the bed, put it any place, and pull away from it, and then occupy another state. And then, as Feynman tells me, I hurry back to it. Start from where I haven't been physically back to where I was an instant ago physically, and then I'm bounced by the blow. I'm not deflected to go beyond it. I am turned around. And then I move back to where I have been in my imagination. So, we're told in the 14th of John, in my Father's house there are many rooms, infinite rooms. Were it not so, would I have told you that I go and prepare a place for you? And when I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am there, you shall be also. Verse 2. I'm talking to myself. So, I put this thing down on a chair or I leave it on the bed, and I go and prepare a place for you. And so, I withdraw from it and feel myself to be what at that moment reason denies. My senses deny it. And having felt it, I then return, and then take it with me to where I have been in my imagination. So, I go to prepare a place for you, that where I am there you shall be also. And then I take it with me, right across a series of events, some wonderful bridge of incidents right into the place where I am in consciousness. Here in this audience tonight, two gentlemen. One told me just a little while ago, Thursday, and the other wrote me. I have the letter of one at home, and I have the memory of the words of the one who just told me his story. So, when I heard you 2 years ago, I had nothing, but literally nothing. Today, I have in my own name 30 pieces of property, 50 really, but 30 outright, 30 are mine. Well, I own 50 pieces of property and I had nothing literally when I first heard you 2 years ago. I believed you and I applied it. The other gentleman in his letter said, there is a family problem that can only be resolved in court. You can't resolve it outside. And we were told by the court because of a solid calendar and because of many other reasons it could not be brought to trial to be resolved until the end of the year. And it's an urgent problem. I am part of that family and I wanted it solved immediately. So, I denied the facts of a crowded calendar. I denied the words of my lawyer. I denied the words of the court, and simply remained faithful to the assumption that it is now resolved now. And this past week I received word from the court and from my lawyer it will be held next month, in the month of March. I know it's completely resolved as I want it. But it can only be resolved in the court. It can't be resolved out of court. They wanted me to wait until the end of the year, and it's too urgent. And so now I have tangible proof it will be resolved in the month of March. So, I say to everyone, it's done in the same way. Your own wonderful human imagination is not a state. That is your existence itself. The soul of man, the immortal soul, is your own wonderful human imagination. It cannot go to eternal death in that body which cannot die. How can it? It's forever. It's passing through all these things, and you and I don't try to become a holy person. That's not our purpose. As Paul said, and he included Peter, when he made the statement in the 14th chapter of the book of Acts, he said, "We are men," speaking now of the two of them, men of passions like others. We pretend not to be holier than others, just as you are. Verse 15. You don't have to be a holy man as the world calls a holy man to practice God's law, because holiness is not a passport to heaven, believe me. All you need to do is believe in your own wonderful human imagination. That's God. That is the being spoken of in Scripture as God. And God's creative power spoken of in Scripture as Jesus Christ is your own wonderful human imagination when it is in action. God only acts and is in existing beings or men. So let us to him who only is, who is among us in our own wonderful imagination, let us give to him the decision. Marriage of heaven, hell, Blake. So tonight, when you go home, if you can't do it here, when you go home do it. Just simply withdraw from your body. You can easily do it. And may I tell you, there's no thrill comparable to this discovery of the soul of man, because as you withdraw and you sit elsewhere thinking of the body as you left it, when you return you feel the whole return. You actually feel something you can never feel while you are all anchored in the body. You feel it and you sense the reality of something that cannot be detected by mortal eye. You don't have to go 100 miles away. I used to practice this in New York City. Sitting in my chair in the living room, I would put myself at the telephone, which I could not see from the angle when I was looking in the living room. While I was at the telephone just simply talking, I would suddenly assume I am back. And that sensation of return, I discovered through that act this feeling in me that is the power of sense. For imagining is that wonderful sensitive power in man. It's the soul of man. Imagination is simply this peculiar reality, really, that you don't know until you try this. Tonight, anyone here can prove to their own satisfaction that you have a soul. You are a soul. My dentist, yesterday, said he just came from a convention, and while discussing all the new techniques of dentistry, his small crowd was concerned about immortality. One chap in particular said to him, "Jim, do you believe in survival?" He said, "Yes." "Do you know?" He said, "No, I believe." "Well, do you know of anyone who knows?" He said, "I think I do. I know one chap. I'm going to see him today in my chair. He tells me he knows from experience of not only survival but resurrection." But you hear all of these doctors. They're all dentists. But that doesn't matter. Doctors too. They can't find this soul of which I speak in the brain as they operate. They can't do anything to that body and find it. Yet you, without being a doctor, you could find it this night by simply sitting next door by a matter of yards. Put yourself on a chair and feel that you are on the other chair, and just wait, don't move. Just wait in that state, and when you feel it naturally, you are just actually sitting in another chair, and then remember where you were. As you remember, all of a sudden you return, and you feel what you can't feel if you're always anchored in the body. Now, just as you detached yourself to move there, you can detach yourself and move into any state in the world. There are infinite states, no limit to the states, called rooms or houses in the Scripture. These rooms are simply states. In the early days of our state, we had the great monasteries, and the weary traveler could remain for a night or maybe 2 days for a rest as he moved north or south, and there he remained. Well, in the grand manner, a far greater picture, these states are where we rest while we are seeking one thing only. We're trying to find the only true God. And so, we go from state to state to state in our search to find the only true God. And you can find him if you do what I asked you to do tonight. Not only you'll find him, but you'll find him as a power, and you can go into any state and fertilize it. Your entrance into a state as you occupy it fertilizes it. I know as I stand here tonight, I've got to reap what I did this morning, just because I experimented. I'm quite willing to reap them. I'll reap them, all of them. But it was such fun. Not taking some definite spot, just taking a withdrawal, and remained withdrawn from the body. As I withdrew, I remained, and suddenly I find myself on the inside of a closed room, and I mean closed, it's sealed. There is no door, no window, no opening at all, everything is sealed. But I knew how I got in. I got in by the power of Jesus Christ, my own wonderful human imagination, and therefore I could get out just as I got in. And when the angry crowd started moving towards me, for I animated them, they are a part of that state, they belong to that state. They are always part of that state. And so, I unwittingly fell into it by not deliberately setting myself a goal. So, I fertilized it. It'll come and I must be quite willing to receive it, knowing I can escape from anything in this world if I remember who I am. So, I say to everyone here, take these passages and put them together. The scientist who finds a little particle, he doesn't know he's watching his own mind, and this little thing starts from where it hasn't been, and it speeds to where it was an instant ago. When it arrives there, instead of being deflected to continue on its way, it is bounced so hard it's turned around, and it moves back to where it hasn't been. So, you move back to where you actually have been in consciousness in your imagination. You haven't been there physically, but you come back and pick up your body, physically, and you take it across a bridge of incident, a series of events leading up to where you actually have been in consciousness. Then you can turn to the 14th chapter of John and see how the first 3 verses are related to Feynman's discovery. I will go and prepare a place for you. And when I go, I will come again and I will take you with myself, that where I am in consciousness there in flesh ye shall be also. Then you move across a series of events, and there you go, to reap the harvest of your own fertilization, because you fertilized it. Then you can see Blake's vision, where the whole vast world, eternity, is, and all things in eternity, independent of our individual acts of creation. They all are these states are. I didn't create these Orientals, they were all in that state. I withdrew from my body, which is only a portion of my soul discerned by my senses, to find myself in a state. I'm the light of the world. I am the life. I am the way into these states. I am the truth of these states, so that when I moved into the state, they became animated. And they are angry in that state. And I did not deliberately go into it. I was simply experimenting and I fertilized it. For my presence in any state is life and I fertilize. So, in the course of a day when we do not know this law, how many states you and I fertilize in our daydream? As children feeling sorry for ourselves. So mother simply punished us because we did something that we should not have done, and so not knowing this law, we go in the backyard mentally and eat worms. So, when we go into the world, we reap the worms because we forget that in these states, we are fertilizing them, for our imagination is the creative power of the universe. It is Christ Jesus. It is the creative power of God as told us in Scripture. 1 Corinthians, chapter 1, verse 24. So, you can start tonight and do it deliberately. May I tell you, try it this night. Just feel the reality of the soul. You will not be part of that crowd of dentists from yesterday who have no knowledge of a soul, because you'll feel it, you'll know it. You'll actually know the existence of a soul. And so, instead of wondering, what's going to happen to me? Do we really survive? Is there such a thing as a future beyond the grave? You won't have to ask that. And you don't care whether you sleep tonight from the grave in this world or not, because you know as far as you are concerned it doesn't really matter, you are immortal. He's prepared the way for his creative power to return to him, and that way that he prepared is revealed to us in Scripture as the life of Jesus Christ, his birth, his discovery of the fatherhood of God, his wonderful story of the serpent. And you will discover this much, that it's on 3 different levels. I've been giving you the middle level tonight. You read the story on the first level, which is called the first deck of the ark. It's literally true. Like a story that you will read over, that's the first deck. The second is what we have been discussing, the psychological motion to fertilize these states. And the top story, which is the spiritual story, is identical with the first, only it's personal. It's very personal. Everything said there and thought of another you experience. So, when he threw the rod down and it turned into a fiery serpent, you realize what throwing the rod down is, that you are that very one. Your spinal cord is that rod thrown down, and you turn into this fiery serpent and up you go. So, everything said in Scripture on the third level is a personal level, and you experience the whole thing personally. On the lowest level, you read it as history, something that took place thousands of years ago. That's how you read it. On the second level, which we discussed tonight, you can do it to fertilize states and change your world, change everything in your world to conform to your heart's desire. Like the chap who would not take the statement, "The calendar is so crowded you can't possibly get the case in until the end of the year," wouldn't accept it. He denied the facts, fertilized the immediate present, and the court calls, the lawyer calls, it's resolved in the month of March. The other chap had nothing. Now he has 30 parcels in his own name and 50 all told, and he had nothing when he heard this story. He fertilized all these states. That's the second level. Then comes the third level, and oh, what a glorious level. When the entire story unfolds within you, personally, and it's all your story. The child, the resurrection, the tomb, all these spoken of as another. It's all about you and you experience everything in it. The dove spoken of another, not another at all. The luminosity of the heavens when the whole heavens open, and then the voice sounded out of its praise and its thrill and its pleasure with this sun and descended on that sun in the form of a dove, and it's all you. Everything spoken of another that took place thousands of years ago you experience. That's the third level. Then you wait for the inevitable removal of this which you crystallized for a purpose. You assume this limit of contraction, called this body, and when you take it off, it resolves itself. And then you return. But then you return infinitely greater because of your experience in this world. So, when Blake made this statement, quoting the 14th chapter of the book of Acts, he added a line to it. In fact, he changed it somewhat when he said, "We are men just as you are men, no holier than any man in this world," and knowing what he did to find it out, he said, "Bring forth all your fires. Put me through all the furnaces of affliction, I will take them." So, I fertilized just to test a horrible state. Well, I can't deny I did it. It's my child, so bring it. And so, I move into a state of war in my own stupidity. All right, bring it. I can't deny my children on this plane. I heard of all kinds of things and then stupidly moved into it, unwittingly, and fertilized it. Now, they've got to come. Everything must come into this world to prove the power of my creativity. If I know it, I will let them come and then quickly cut them off. Because what you planted you need not let it go forever, you can cut it off. But don't until it grows. He said, do not attempt to tear up the little weed. Let it grow with the wheat, and as they grow then you can separate them. So let them grow. For you didn't plant only the tares and only the little weed, you planted wonderful things in this world, so let them come together. When they're completely matured, then you can simply separate them. So tonight, in a very simple way, for those who are here for the first time, Let me show you how we actually operate this simple principle. Instead of withdrawing from the body unknowingly into any old state, you withdraw deliberately into a predetermined state. So, you put the body on the bed or on the chair and you imagine yourself in the state predetermined, a state you really want to realize in this world. You want to be successful? With whom would you share it? A few friends at a little dinner party, or a luncheon, or a tea, or a cocktail party, any kind of a party where they would discuss your success and truly discuss it in the sense that they would be happy about it. Well now, know exactly where you're going to go while you are still seated, anchored to this body, and then let the body relax, and get into that area in your mind's eye where your friends are present and you're all discussing your success. And it all seems natural. You are accepting their praise, accepting their congratulations, and it seems very, very natural, with all of the sensory tones of reality. Then, return to the body, and follow Feynman's concept. It starts from where it hasn't been, and it speeds to where it was an instant ago. As it arrives there, it is bounced so hard it's turned around, its time sense is turned around, and now it returns to where it hasn't been. See it? It starts in time from where it hasn't yet realized the state and moves back to where physically it was only an instant ago, and then it's bounced and turned around, and it moves now across this bridge of incident leading up to the fulfillment of that state in consciousness where you were, where all these friends were gathered together to congratulate you on your good fortune. And that's how it works. So, you can take Feynman, the 14th of John, my experience of this morning, and my friend Blake, and put them all together, and see they're all talking about the same thing. Only, I would have everyone here do it deliberately and not unknowingly so that you would only fertilize lovely areas. But this morning I did it just for fun because I really don't care. If I know that I'm bringing all things into the world, it doesn't really matter. I don't judge anyone, really, because he is not the state. He simply fertilized it at some point in time, and, therefore, forgive him, because he did it unknowingly or he would not have brought it into the world. So, you can forgive everyone in this world for what he's harvesting, because he had to harvest his own fertilized field, and he didn't know he was doing it. So, Blake said, always discriminate between the state of the man, and he identifies the man with imagination. He said, man is all imagination, and the God is man, and exists in us and we in him. The eternal body of man is the imagination, and that is God himself. So, you can forgive a man for his state, for he certainly planted it, or he fertilized it. It was always there but not fertilized and could only be fertilized if the soul entered it. And the soul and human imagination are one. So, we can start tonight in spite of what is coming into our world and duplicate the success of the two gentlemen that I spoke of tonight. There will be eventually 100% success. I'm not saying that you're not going to harvest the unlovely things that you did in the past. You'll harvest them. But then know that you did them and forget it. Don't blame yourself. Don't feel sorry for yourself, because it's feeling sorry for yourself in the past that caused you to fertilize that state. So, we all know as children if we were criticized and we thought it was not just criticism, we felt very sorry ourselves and wanted to hurt those who loved us most, by our own self-pity. In that act of self-pity, you were fertilizing. You didn't know it, because we certainly were not in the body, we were completely gone, were we not? So that's how we do it. But above all things, you can discover the reality of the soul, that which cannot die. So, when Blake said, when I first and once did descry the immortal man that cannot die, and what a thrill, what a joy it is to discover that self of selves that cannot die. It doesn't really matter. You don't want to leave your friends. You have obligations to life. You have wives and husbands and children, all kinds of things in this world, and you feel that your presence is necessary. You know that much. But yet you are resigned to go any moment in time, because you know you planted enough, or you should know that, and you'll take it off. Although they'll miss your physical presence, nevertheless, you don't have that fear of going. There's no fear of going at all. You'll go any moment in time when you know the reality of the soul of man. For they can't die either, you know that much, so the parting is not forever. The parting is only for a little moment, and all must make their exit from this world. All must, so it really doesn't matter. So, try this night to feel and discover the reality of the soul of man. And know that that is the sperm of God, the creative power of God, and every state it enters it fertilizes, and these states mature in the world. Now let us go into the silence. Before the questions, may I remind you this is easy. Don't let anyone tell you it is difficult. Let no one tell you that you must be a holy person to do it. Let no one. It's very easy. Without even bringing anyone into your mind's eye, an individual, just reminisce, sitting physically one place and standing at your window. It could be the same room, mentally, and looking out on a scene. Then feel the joy and the thrill of your accomplishments as though they were facts, and then snap back to the body that is only a foot or so away in the same room. In that very moment you fertilize the state because everything is everywhere and now right here. Don't have to rush off to do it at all. Just right here. Question. Couldn't you through revision change the scene that was unpleasant this morning? Answer. Yes, I could. But do you know, I'm curious. I know I sired that state. What thrilled me, I'm going to do it. Because I observed everything, not a little crevice, not a hole in it that would allow me to get into it. So not a thing could keep me out and not a thing could keep me in. I'm glad I did it. I told you one unlovely state, but many were perfectly lovely. I did it just to experiment. It was lots of fun. But they could be revised and addle the egg. Question. What if something happened to the body while you were away? Answer. It won't. Not a thing will happen to the body, sir, not a thing. I know there are many books and many teachers who tell you if you're out, someone could take possession of it. Don't you believe it? No one is going to take possession of that body at all. You can have some very strange experiences outside of the body which can be costly. In my own case, it was painful and costly, but I'm glad it happened. And besides, I learned a lesson. Question. Well, what about fire? Answer. Oh no, it wouldn't. Doesn't take long, just a matter of seconds. Just a matter of seconds. It doesn't take more than a matter of seconds to detach and feel the state and to seal it. No one state I entered this morning, if you time, it would be not more than 10 to 15 seconds. It was all real, just like this, and then I went back to the body. Went to another state. So, you aren't gone, really. It's fun. May I tell you, it's lots of fun. But you discover the soul, and you use the being that you really are. Some things. You go a little far and you might, well, in my own case, where I was, I don't know, some fabulous distance, but I came back towards the body like a meteor falling. I felt in that descent it was so rapid and from such an enormous distance that I would break my neck in the descent. And so, I did this, as you would dive in, not the body on the pool. And I heard a click. After I told my wife at breakfast what I'd experienced that morning, and then as the day progressed, it got stiffer and stiffer and stiffer, and that night the pain was excruciating, so she insisted that I go to the hospital for an X-ray. So, they X-rayed me, not a thing could they find. But they knew from my face I was in great pain, and they tried to put me in traction, but they had no room available. So I couldn't remain in the hospital because there was no room. Went back home and the next day it eased a little bit, and the next day a little bit better. Then it returned after 3 days to a norm. But that experience cost me $125. The X-rays were $25. For his interpretation was $40. The taxi back and forth. The room that they couldn't give me was another $25 or $30 because I occupied it for a while, but I couldn't remain in it. But all these things. And the family doctor whom we called who recommended the hospital, he sent his bill. So, you add the whole thing together, it cost me $100 for this wonderful experience of coming like a meteor towards my body, trying to protect myself from breaking my neck. I did this in my imagination and the X-ray couldn't show anything. He said, "Your face shows terrific pain, but I can't detect from these X-rays anything." And this was the head doctor at the Presbyterian Hospital in New York City, the biggest hospital in New York City, if not in the country. Presbyterian Medical, and here was the head man on bones. He knew all about bones, but he couldn't read that picture. When I told him what I did in my vision, he broke into a wonderful laugh, talking to him. He couldn't believe that for one moment, and yet that was the cause of it. I had the experience, he didn't. And he couldn't find with all of his technical pictures anything wrong with me. But he could see in my face I was in great, great pain. So, I have these experiences. Not all result that way. I won't stop them. Question. Inaudible. Answer. It's a peculiar feeling. Well, try it tonight and you'll know far better. Question. I have tried it, and I haven't been very successful at it. Answer. Well, I'll tell you what, don't go too far. Sit in one chair, imagine yourself on another chair, and don't break that spell until that other chair seems as natural as where the body was when you started. Make it natural. Feel an object. If it's next to a bookcase, as though you were taking a book from the shelf, and feel natural. And then be surprised when you aren't really here but you're there. It comes in a peculiar feeling and a surprise that you're there. It's a detachment. All this doesn't make sense, but to me it's the only sense. Question. Could I, in this state, move an object? Answer. It's been done. Question. Like you said, if I were sitting there, I could pick this book up and, say, set it down on the other. Answer. My dear, it has been done, not once but time and time again. We told a story the other night. How many people believed it is irrelevant as far as I am concerned, but you can't rationalize it. How could a man in his excitement, after having had the most wonderful experience, share that experience with a dear friend back east in the form of a letter, and late on the evening of, say, Thursday he posts the letter. It's marked by the postal department. The time is evening. It's Los Angeles. If you take the difference in time between here and where it was posted, that office was already closed. When he posted it, that office was closed. It wasn't opened by anyone. It wasn't sent in any strange manner, just an airmail, not special delivery. When the manager of that office arrived the next day, that letter was on his desk, and yet the mail of the day had not yet been delivered. So, she got on the wire and called. How could this thing be? There are so many strange things in this world. Question. Neville, if I should be so successful as to take this little soul journey, is it possible that you're making him dead to realize that you are not ever in the body? Answer. Well, my wife has seen me walk the floor so often and the body was on the bed that she's not disturbed anymore. So often she's seen what should be on the bed walking around, and she looks and there he is. I've got 2 husbands, there's one walking there and there's one on the bed. But, at first it disturbed her, but it doesn't disturb her anymore, so often she's seen it. One morning, we had this little dog, a little black and tan cocker, called him Henry. Well, Henry would always sleep on my wife's bed or on my daughter's bed. He'd never come near mine because I'd kick him off. And so, I didn't want to be disturbed with this dog. But she would never call it a disturbance, and if I ever scolded him, she would scold me, because if it was ever part of an argument, Henry got the better of it. So, this night, in the wee hours of the morning, I awoke and looked over and I saw the whole bed shaking. I said to myself, that darned dog. It's disturbing Bill's rest. I looked down and here's Henry on the floor. He's not in the bed at all. He's looking up at the bed scared stiff. So, I looked at the bed again and here was my wife out of her body about, I would say, a foot out of the body, and going this way from head to feet, but going about 6 inches beyond. End of lecture.
If you enjoyed listening to this recording, please click the like button and click the subscribe button below to receive notification when we release new recordings. Click the link in the description below to receive our free Building Mental Muscle newsletter, and for a limited time get these 10 classic best-selling Law of Attraction books for free.